2, Jeff Cameron Show on Libations Friday. Thanks for tuning to it. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. On Twitter, it's at Jay Cameron Show. Appreciate you if you're watching there in the live chat. Well, it's not live. It's the chat.
The comment section, yeah.
The comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, everybody. If you're driving around, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, thanks for listening. We really appreciate you. We are off on a jet plane this weekend and had to record today's show. Obviously, we're going over to watch Florida State, hopefully win convincingly. First games of the year against a real opponent and not some, tiny school that has no chance of competing. I always say I'll just take a win. I don't really care. I mean, yes, I'd like to win by 40. I'd love it to be a rocking chair game so we can really concentrate on Guinness. But the truth is, just win the game. Exhale, get back to the States. Okay, that was fun. What a great life experience. Now let's saddle in for the football season, right? It's weird. It's kind of the way I view that game.
Yeah, it reminds me of 2014 when we opened with Oklahoma State in Jerry's World, and it felt like an inverted season. It felt like 2014's opener out there was a coronation for the championship. It was almost like a get-together to celebrate our natty, and then you got to the business of playing football the next week. As it turned out, that game looked like a lot of them did for Florida State, which is far too close, for comfort. It took on a little bit of a different that's 10 years ago now, which is just wild to think. Also,
the great Jameis run, his best run ever. In college football, yeah.
The white gold oversized helmets too, and the numbers that you couldn't read. It was
hideous,
ghastly, really. But that was a game where everybody was just so happy, and it wasn't quite result be damned because we were tested on that front in the fourth quarter. It's like, no, we would like to win this one.
Yeah.
But it felt like an event. And then the season happened after that. And that's what this one is most certainly that because you're flying a little bit farther than Dallas or Arlington, Texas to go watch this game. And I just love that it's an inverted weather experience, man. I'm hoping, and the odds are against, that the weather for the Florida game at the end of the season is as cool, literally as cool as it will be for the opener against Georgia Tech. Probably not going to happen. Probably will be warmer for the Florida game.
Depressingly, I think you're probably right. Yes, I think that's probably true. It is weird too because we go into this season without the same weight that you have every season prior to this one in the history of college football. And you might say, what the hell are you talking about? Well, one of the unique things about college football for a very long time that was different than the NFL, and I will forever miss this to some extent, was that wins and losses really, really mattered. Now, I know last year our undefeated season seemed not to matter to the committee. Well documented. But for most of the history of college football, losing a game like this would see you as having zero chance to play for a national title. If you lost this game to Georgia Tech a week from tomorrow, you would be out of contention for a national title in week one. You would walk out of that stadium going, well, son of a bitch, it's over. Let's just try to see if we can get to the Orange Bowl or something, and we'll see how that's the way college football was for a very long time. And now it's very different. It's every week is where do we sit as a seed in the college football 12-team playoff? Are we in? Is the ACC going to get 2 teams in? How many teams will the SEC and the Big Ten get? How many of their teams are going to make up the 12? Because actually, if you just go through a basic exercise, it's kind of fun to do. I think it's less than people realize. The ACC has an automatic bid for the champion. The group of 5, the highest ranked group of 5 champion, right, is in automatically. That's 2. The SEC champion is in. That's 3. The Big Ten champion is in. That's 4. The Big 12 champion is in automatically. That's 5. Okay, you got 7 spots left. One would assume the Big Ten gets a second team and the SEC gets a second team. Now you have 5 teams left from there.
If Notre Dame is close, they'll put Notre Dame in.
I was just about to say, Notre Dame has a special caveat. If they win 10 games, basically, which I don't know how they couldn't, they're in. So now you're down to 3 or 4 at-large spots, right? And you got to figure out who that would be. Well, honestly, if the second-place team in the ACC is a 10-win team, I think the ACC is going to get a second team in. And I do. I think it'll be hard to get a third or a fourth SEC team. I don't see them getting any more than 3 in.
Well, I could see them using a crowbar to wedge them in, because that's what they did last year after they took that crowbar to the back of our skull and cracked it open. It's tough, because you're talking about, again, 5 auto bids. Notre Dame is 6.
Yeah,
right?
So 6 more bids.
So 6 more bids. Your runners up in the SEC and the Big Ten certainly are in.
So 4 more bids.
Probably the team in this division that couldn't get to the SEC championship, because I don't think they still have West and East, don't they, in the SEC?
Mm-hmm.
They do. So let's say Georgia gets to the championship game.
Well, they're going to, yeah.
And Tennessee finishes second in that side, and they've got 2 losses. They're in. So now you're down to 3.
Depends
you're
on
going to get rewarded for not going to Atlanta. I really believe in the SEC.
It's going to be.
I think also the West. So let's just say it's Georgia, LSU, and Bama's in second in the West, and they've got 2 losses, and Tennessee's got 2 losses, and they're second in the East. Both of those teams are in. So now you're down to 2 spots, I think.
And right? the Big Ten will get a second team in. The non-champion probably gets in.
Right. Well, and that's interesting in its own right, because that might be like Iowa in the West. They might not get in, but the Ohio State, Michigan non-championship game representative would get in. Oh, wait a minute. There's Oregon now. What am I talking about? Oregon's out there. So, man, I don't think there's room. I just did it. I don't think there's room. I think you're a 1-bid league, maybe 2 if everything falls.
I think if you're a 10-win top 15 team out of the ACC, you probably get in. I think you got to be a 10-win team. I don't think you can have 3 losses and get in. I don't think so. But if you're a 10-2 team, it depends on who you beat, of course, obviously, and who you lost to. But I mean, not every 10-win team is built the same way, just like not every 9 or 12 or whatever it is. That's
the argument that they're going to make. Well, I'm sorry, but I know they finished 3rd in the West, but 10-2 Ole Miss is a far better team than a 10-2 Florida State or a 10-2 Miami. So they're getting in over Florida State. You could even do it by names of schools. So there's 5 auto bids. Let's just say that the Big Ten's representative is Ohio State. Let's just say they actually live up to expectations for the first time in a little while, and they do follow through. If it's close, Oregon's in. If it's close, Michigan probably. If Michigan's a 10-win team, they get in. They probably won't be. If Texas, let's just say Georgia's the representative for the SEC. Texas probably still gets in. Tennessee probably still gets in if they're 10 wins.
We think
Alabama could. I mean,
here's your problem, Tom. The SEC is going to beat the hell out of each other. And I know that's what they've always said for years, but they're going to do that. I don't think there's a bunch of. I think there's a lot of 2 to 3 loss SEC teams this year, and now all of a sudden, if you've got a 10-win top 10 ACC team or top 12 ACC team, and you're trying to make an argument for a 3-loss SEC team, I don't know, man. I think especially if that 10-win team is FSU, I don't think they screw us twice. I think we get in.
I don't know. I think if it's close, they will. And if they can, they will. Put it that way. If they can, they will. And so let's just say Notre Dame gets in. And you're talking about non-SEC and Big Ten. So 3 others. So you got 4 bids before you get to SEC, Big Ten. Right? So I think you're setting the over/under at that point at 6.5 SEC and Big Ten teams that are getting into the playoff field. And at that point,
in total, so I'm okay.
It gets close.
It's really close, and the season will provide the answers. It's fun to speculate like this, but I got to go back through. I did this exercise, and I got to find out where I put it. I wrote down. I went through Texas's schedule. I went through Georgia's schedule. I went through Alabama's schedule. I went through Michigan and Ohio State, and I was just kind of going through all these. And the way it kind of worked out in my head, now these are games that I'm playing in my head on paper, so it doesn't mean anything. But as I was doing this, I was like, man, it sure is a lot of 3-loss SEC teams here. I don't know, buddy. I don't know.
It won't. No, a 3-loss SEC team will get in over a 2-loss ACC team. It will. Last year, a 0-loss ACC team did not get in over 1-loss Big 12 team.
It was the 1 year. It was the 1 year they could do that, and we've talked about the circumstances that were set up.
Jordan could have been healthy, and it would have happened. Old Kirky Poo started that thing in before Jordan's leg broke. So
yeah, but it was 4 teams, and the system was screwed up to begin with. Remember, we said this was bound to happen. It was unprecedented because it hadn't happened. But most of us said from the beginning, this is the dumbest thing in the world to have 5 power conferences and 4 playoff spots. Somebody from a power conference is going to get screwed someday. Turns out that somebody was us, but it was always in the making. They got lucky in the past that it didn't happen. It should have happened before then. So
they had to clear out in this instance. The clear out was 0 versus 1 in terms of losses, and either Texas or Alabama has to get screwed. I mean, that's the trap.
Yeah, they had to get Alabama in, and the only way they could get Alabama in was they had to put Texas in. And so once Texas was in, we were out. And that was crazy and wrong and unprecedented. There's 12 teams. You don't have to do that now. That last year was really the only year that could happen. I would be surprised after the uproar that's just occurred, in which you were able to call into question the integrity of the sport, that you would want to do that again.
It was great for ratings. I think they'd absolutely do it again. They got unbelievable ratings. Hell, we got a lot of clicks that we didn't want because of this travesty. That Georgia-Florida State press conference is one of our most viewed videos of the year. That useless exercise of Kirby and Mike talking about a game that mattered not was one of the most viewed things because people were like, what the hell just happened? I think because they broke the dam, it makes it easier to do in the future. I don't think it scares them from doing it more.
They'll never be devoid of controversy, whether it's you're deciding who's 4 and who's 5, or who's 12 and who's 13, or who's 14 and who's 15, because they're going to 14 soon. It should have just jumped to 16 and be done with it. But anyhow, the point would be there's always going to be controversy about this, but I don't know that they'll actively try to screw somebody at, you're going to have arguments about 13 and 12 because those are teams that by definition are 2 and 3 loss teams.
Right.
And so the arguments are going to be like, degrees to who sucks more.
So to me, the only way that you can make a case, if we're not the ACC champion, is we go 11-1 and we lose the ACC championship game. That's the only time that you can make the case for Florida State, because at that point you will have beaten 2 out of 3 of Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame in order to make it to the college football, or in order to make it to the ACC championship, and you've got an at-large victory over Notre Dame. This is why I consistently say that when you're looking for the ACC race, you're playing Clemson, Miami, and SMU. You got to win 2 out of those 3 games. And if you want an at-large bid, add Notre Dame into that mix. SMU, Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. You got to win 3 out of 4 if you want an at-large bid, because at that point you need to have a poker chip over Notre Dame. But if you go 10-2 and you lose in the ACC championship game, you really haven't beaten anybody. They're going to hold you out. If you go 11-1 and you lose in the ACC championship,
you might have
got a case, but I don't think they will give you. They've just told you they've got more good teams, more brand names in those conferences than ever. They'll put in a 10-2 Tennessee that does not make the SEC championship game over a 10-2 Florida State.
It depends on who the wins and losses are to. If you have a road loss by 3 to Notre Dame and a road loss to a 11-win Miami team by 3 down in Miami, and you have wins over Clemson and wins over SMU on the road and whatever the schedule, we'll figure out who's what, right? But that Tennessee team loses to, okay, I got to look at Tennessee's schedule, but
it matters about the patch. It's not about It's not about the patch of the school. It's the patch on just to the left of it.
No, it definitely matters. No, I'm not saying that it doesn't. And this is set up for the SEC and the Big Ten. This whole thing is set up for the SEC and the Big Ten. And I did say that when we go to the Big Ten or the SEC and we play in a given year a schedule that is ranked number 1 in the country because we're playing LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida. We keep Miami on the schedule. We have, whomever, right? So all of a sudden you have 8 games against top 20 teams and you lose 3 of them. I'm going to be the guy going, screw the 12-0 BYU squad that's trying to get in this playoff over our 9-3 ass. They can go to hell because they didn't play anything close to the schedule we did. I'll be that guy.
No, I don't think you're going to be wrong in that instance. Not to relitigate last year, but we scheduled hard last year, and we did beat the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And in the second half, we shut his ass down in a way.
It didn't help us that LSU ended up. He was great, but LSU's defense turned out to be a sieve to everybody they played, and they lost games. If we had been the team that knocked them off, and they only had like one other loss, but they.
No, I mean, Auburn took Georgia to the mattresses. Auburn took Alabama to the mattresses. They lost tons of games, but Auburn was a feather in the cap of the argument for Alabama. LSU was not a feather in our cap. So losses only matter when losses are told to matter.
But Tom, okay, so we agree on this to an extent. Let's not pretend Alabama didn't beat Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Sure.
I mean, that helped the resume beyond just being in the SEC. They beat Georgia, who we both think is the best team in the country. So I don't think they should have got in over us. If you wanted to do it, you could have screwed Texas, I suppose. And you couldn't do that because they beat Alabama head to head. But Alabama's resume wasn't devoid of really quality wins. Beating Georgia in the SEC title game is a hell of a thing.
They also had a quality loss, because they played Texas on the road, and that put them in a position better than where we were.
Texas at home and lost. They played Texas beat Alabama at Alabama.
Oh, sorry, forgive me. So it's even more of a quality loss that Texas came to them in their home backyard, and they lost at home to Texas. So that makes it even more quality because Texas.
No, I agree. If you're deciphering between undefeated and a loss, that you have to at that point, especially with a conference champion that's undefeated, you have to put FSU in. Hence the argument. We're in agreement on that. I just push back on FSU folks who say, well, Alabama was terrible. Well, Alabama was not terrible. They beat Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Well, which is why I thought if Georgia even made the playoff and we did with Jordan, we had a crack at it, because Georgia showed its ass often enough last year that you go to Auburn and you allow that Auburn team to take you all the way. Did they go to overtime, or did they get it out in the fourth quarter of that football game? I mean, so you're either going to choose what a team is in their best week, or you're going to choose the resume. And the resume was for Florida State. What Alabama is in its best week is immaterial to me because they lost a football game. If you're going to argue that what a team is in its best week should be what gets you into the playoff, then Georgia should have always been in the playoff. Florida State should have won national championships, plural, in the 90s that they were not qualified to win because they lost a football game. But we devalued the wins and the losses. And I think, to return to the original point, that because they did it last year, it makes it easier to do again. And that's where, if it's close, man, and it's like Jameis and Jacob Coker. If it's close, I'm going with Jameis. If it's close, they're going with Tennessee. If it's close, they're going with Ole Miss. They just are. It has to be unequivocal. You have to have insulation beyond insulation. I thought it was unequivocal last year. I've got to change the definition of that word to beyond Alabama, Texas, and Florida State proof, because good God, they'll do it again at 12, just like they did at 4.
Georgia and Auburn, for people who don't remember, were tied at 17 heading into the fourth quarter. That was the 5th game of the year. Georgia won the game in regulation 27-20.
Okay.
That was the final score of that game.
That Auburn team, unbelievable football team. Yeah.
It is weird that Auburn team, as bad as they were, scared the hell out of and should have beaten Alabama and was tied in the fourth quarter with Georgia. What a weird Auburn team.
And I wonder, so if Bama lost and then they beat Georgia, if they lost to Auburn, it's 2 losses, but they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, what would they have done? would they put Texas and Georgia in and held us out? I'm telling you, man, I don't know that we were ever getting in. They might have put a one-loss non-SEC champion Georgia in with Texas and held us out and said, you're not one of the best 5 teams. I don't know that we were ever getting in.
You certainly can make the argument that it's not impossible to think that they were going to do that given what they did. So you can make the argument, whereas in the past, I would have told you that is impossible. They would not have done that. The fact that they did what they did suggests that it would not have been impossible, given the scenario you just gave, that they would have done that. I don't think that's what would have happened. But then again, I didn't think they were going to exclude undefeated Power 5 conference champion Florida State from the playoff in favor of a team with a loss. Now, again, that was seemingly bound to happen at some point, some year. Unfortunately for us, this was the year they could get away with doing it and service Alabama the way they wanted to in Nick's final season, because the system was always stupid. You have 5 Power 5 conference champions and 4 spots. You were destined to screw somebody at some point. The problem is with us getting screwed is that they did it in an unprecedented fashion. They took an undefeated. You let TCU go to the playoff after they lost their conference championship game the previous year. Right. They lost the last game they played.
Right. Ohio State didn't play in the conference championship and made it in. They were insulated because they're Ohio State. That's what I'm saying here. And again, let's just say Georgia rolls and Texas does what it does. Georgia's number whatever, 1, 2, or 3.
It would have been 1.
They would have put Texas 4 over us. I'm telling you, man. Like there was no way they would have put one-loss Texas in.
I really don't think they would have put Texas in over us. They wanted to put Alabama in, so they had to put Texas in because Texas beat Alabama at Alabama. That was the problem, was that they wanted Alabama in. But if Alabama had bowed out with that loss to Auburn, if they had that loss that they should have had, the one that Herb Street and Fowler celebrated like children, they're out. They're done. We're in at that point. They would have said, damn, we wanted to put you in, but you just lost to Auburn. That's your second loss. I can't let you in. But they didn't. And so then when they turned around and beat Georgia, they're like, okay, we got to get them in. What are we going to do? Well, you can't get them in unless you put Texas in. All right, I guess Florida State's screwed, and we'll just tell everybody it's their quarterback, even though we know it's not.
Correct. Yeah. Look, man, I don't like slinging my Patriot supply as much as the next guy, but for this particular issue, I do believe my Patriot supply.
Why do you think just because they were going to be an SEC team? Texas wasn't an SEC team yet. Why would you think they would have put them in?
Nick Saban wasn't an ESPN colleague yet.
No, but the SEC's contract with ESPN, we know that they were going to make that. And we also know that Saban had already, well, we don't know this, Correct. But it's understood that the agreement was in place with Saban and ESPN.
It's also understood that Texas was coming next year. I
don't do favors for a team that's never been in your conference. Alabama is the staple of the SEC. They are the number 1 dog in the SEC. That's why they did that. Texas is just is a lucky partner in that moment.
Maybe. I don't know. It's a future partner, just like Nick Saban was a future partner. The contract was signed. They knew where it was going.
Yes. I don't think – I think Saban is a little bit different than just randomly putting a Texas team out of the Big 12 in over undefeated Florida State. They had to do it because they wanted Alabama and Nick Saban in. That's the only reason Texas got curried favor to, not because they were going to be an SEC member. Now, from here on out, Tom, they will get the SEC treatment.
I'm telling you. Yeah, it's just if we're a 2-bid league, it's because we went 12-0 and we lost the ACC championship game. And even then, I'd get a little squirrely. Because you're going to have Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey will go to war for the 12th spot just like he did the 4th.
Well, of course he will. And now he'll have carte blanche to do it even more than he did before because they're in bed together. I mean,
he'll start stripping like Tom Wilkinson and Michael Clayton.
Oh, my goodness.
I love you. And here you go. Yes.
That's probably my favorite movie of all time. I've seen that like 25 times.
Unbelievable.
Every time it comes on, I'm like, ooh, Michael Clayton's on.
Yeah, and the playoff committee and the network, they were Tilda Swinton. They made the call. And we were just the unlucky who got put down on his back, and they
I'm not the guy you kill.
No, we were Tom Wilkinson. So maybe someday there'll be a whistleblower, and that's Michael Clayton.
Jeff Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio Warchant TV. Let's do the Red Zone next. Time for the Red Zone. Let's do it up. If you'll cue it up, and I'll tell everybody about my friend Adam Tolliver, fellow Nole, in a moment, but I want to hear the goodness that is this montage.
Welcome to the majesty.
Every freaking rep.
The elegance.
To win the game. Oh, he hits the upright. It's no good.
You have entered.
Someone burned down the funeral home. You burnt the funeral home.
Lives will be changed.
Sideline. Touchdown. Unbelievable.
Mothers will cry.
When you see your players give all that they have and you lose that way, it's tough.
Legacies are etched into eternity.
I know who I am.
North, South Dakota was his brother from West Virginia.
This is the Red Zone.
That's good enough.
Always great. Scoring in the retirement red zone is what my man Adam does, along with his great team at Artisan Financial Strategies. And they have been a great partner of ours. And many of you have gone over to noleretirement.com to learn more about their specialties and all that they can do to prepare you to win in retirement. Maybe spend your remaining days without running out of money is a good idea. Protect yourself and your family from rising healthcare costs. 30-plus years for him and his team at Artisan. Go check him out. Go check out noleretirement.com. Adam is awesome. Very, very good at what he does. Exceptional at what he does. And also a great partner here. And he's an Nole, just like we are. Tom, where are we? First down. Here we go.
All right, this is in honor of going to Leopardstown next week. Pick a horse.
Good times.
I want you to pick a horse at wide receiver not named Malik Benson for the season. Pick a guy that you think maybe he doesn't go to the level that we're all hoping that the player does, but who would be your guy? This is the guy I'm going to ride with. This is the guy I hope emerges to be that second receiver.
It's going to sound strange for me to say this. It's, meet the boss, the same as the old boss, the new boss thing. Kentron Portier, man, I just think that guy has to be a big part of what you do week to week. He's played a bunch of football. He has not been healthy off and on in his career. He has not been consistent, but his body type, his experience, you could really lean on a guy like that. He doesn't have to be an all-American type receiver. He needs to be responsible. He needs to block. You need to be able to run the ball to get him the ball and play action. I think he can be a big body receiver that you depend on week to week. I think everybody else kind of plays a different role than Kentron Portier. He's the guy that's been in this system the longest. He's the guy that has the body type you would think to be able to block out on the edge in the quick game and the screen game. He's the guy that I think can make the tough contested catch on this roster compared to some of the smaller guys that are speedsters. So I just need Kentron Portier to emerge. It would be awesome if if Darion was able to emerge with him because they're very similar players. I know it's a big if, guys. I can hear you right now yelling at your radio. There's zero chance, Jeff, those two guys stay healthy long enough to aid us in this endeavor. But you don't know that. Just because somebody's been injury prone in the past does not mean necessarily that they'll be injury prone this season. There are countless examples to give in which a player was written off because they weren't productive and maybe they had a couple of years in which they were banged up and then they emerged healthy for the first time in their career and they had a very, very good season. We've seen that happen before. I'm hoping that's the kind of thing that happens to those two kids, Kentron Portier in particular, because I think he's the most skilled of that body type.
Yeah, I would say Darion for me. Give me Darion as that guy. The skill set, it fits what we need. You could still have an outside weapon that can help you in situations where you're in the red zone. Literally, this is the segment we're doing. Kyle Morlock can also be that player as well. But Darion has a unique skill set that, if healthy and if consistent, I know, if we'll see. Second down would.
Before we get to second down, I want to throw this one other thing in there. My answer would have been Hakeem Williams. We need Hakeem to be everything we thought he could be when he was recruited. And the few instances where we've caught a glimpse of that five-star talent, have really excited us, but they've been too few and far between for a variety of reasons. And when you hear me say Kentron Portier and then you say Darion Williamson, I can hear the audience saying, are we not going to mention our 5-star wide receiver who's a sophomore? I get it. I think he's a guy that, maybe by mid-season we're talking a lot about. We're talking a lot about by, maybe week 2, 3. But early on, it doesn't seem that way.
Second down. Looking at safety. Pick a horse not named Shaheem Brown for the season. Who's your guy?
I just think you brought in Devontae Brown because he's played a gazillion football games and he's got the right body type for it. And it's got to be him, in my opinion. I'm not saying he has to be the starter because you don't have anybody else. I'm saying he should probably be the starter because he's played a lot of football and he's a pretty good-looking football player.
I think so. You're looking for the steadying presence there.
Yeah.
It probably needs to be Devontae. They're going to rotate heavily there, though.
Yeah, they are. And they have really talented guys they can rotate in. So, yeah.
That audition continues into the season. Some of them are set, and then some, I think, will continue.
I agree with that.
Third down, pick a horse in the backfield. Come on. Who do you want? This one's a little bit different. I'm talking about production, and you can choose total yardage, explosive plays, define the category you're looking for, and who's your guy.
Well, given what you just said, because he's a huge asset to us in the passing game, Toafili probably has to be the guy. I think they're going to give him the ball enough as a runner so that he'll have production there too. But he's so dangerous in the passing game. So you mentioned total yardage, probably Toafili. He's a running back, but he can hurt you in a lot of ways. Listen, Roydale Williams is going to be the workhorse. I think he's your workhorse. But if we're going to add up all the ways that Toafili helps you out of the backfield, then I think he's probably the guy.
He's so fast, too. I mean, we've talked a lot about the new speed that's on campus with Malik first, but then Jalen Lucas coming in, and obviously he's a blur, and so is Jalen Brown. Lawrence didn't get any slower. That's another thing. Maybe the wheel route comes back, or the rail, whatever the hell they call it, comes back to this offense. That was a big part of it when Florida State did not have a whole lot in the way of receivers, proven receivers. They did a great job of matching up backs on linebackers and slower safeties. Actually, one of the crimes, unfortunately, in the way the Clemson game finished, we might have won that game outright before overtime. There was a rail route or two where we had a guy, and I don't know why we didn't see him, but that might come back to the offense this year. And if it does, Jalen Lucas is an excellent candidate, but Toafili's a very, very good one. And then the fourth down question, same theme. Pick a horse, freshman. And you can define that by the end of the season, this guy will be a contributor. I think he'll be the most consistent freshman all season long. However you want to play it, pick a freshman that you want to ride with for this year.
Elijah Moore.
Yeah. Okay.
That was kind of easy.
Yeah. Although
listen, Luane McCoy is a good player, and I think if he continues on the track that he's on, he'll be a big part of what we do by midseason. Maybe even early on, he impacts games, but he doesn't have Elijah's body type. So Elijah Moore is a different looking kid. And I always side, if you're two equally talented guys are out on the field together, give me the bigger one.
Yeah. Agreed. There are situations that already we don't have. If we had Johnny Wilson on this roster, Elijah gets buried more, right? But because you don't, Elijah probably gets some run. I think by the end of the year, Landon Thomas could be that guy. Chris Thompson does not parse with pleasantries and hype, if you will.
Right.
He doesn't talk kids up very easily. The fact that Landon, wearing a red jersey, as red as the font of the red zone above us, in practice versus the garnet jersey, that sends a message about availability. But that Chris Thompson thinks enough of the kid before going through a fall camp, full bore, man, that tells me that detail-wise, they trust him. And if you're trusted and it's that position in Mike Norvell's offense, by the end of the season, not early in the season necessarily, but by the end of the year, Landon Thomas could be a real problem.
They also have a guy that it's probably really unfair for us to continue to talk about because he reclassified. I mean, this is a kid, you always hear the phrase, he should be in high school. He should really be in high school. And he's already an impactful player. That Williams kid is considered a tight end. I know he's a defensive end as well, but I don't know how they're going to keep him off the field.
Yeah, somebody brought that up yesterday when we were talking in the Solving for the Future segment that, well, what if your defensive end issues are mitigated by Amari Williams? Like, oh, that's a fair point. I mean, if he's that freak of an athlete, but the thing is, we all see one thing, and the first thing that he does is very good. So he better be a badass first-round edge rusher if you're going to move him back across the ball.
I don't believe they're going to. I think he's going to be a tight end, and I think he's going to be a mismatch as he grows into his role. I think he's a problem. He's tough to guard, and he may not impact the team all that much this year. Again, that's a crazy thing to project for a kid who quite literally should be in high school, a senior in high school. But I mean, his body type is just different, and he's got a lot of skill.
Punter's chance to Cam Davis. As much as I love that running back room, there's attrition over the course of a season. Not rooting for it. It's just it's the nature of the position. If he gets a crack at it in a game, I've seen a couple moments where the vision is there, the timing is there. Well, if you have the vision and the timing and that's your body type, I mean, they might give you looks. You might actually be able to climb up the chart and get at least a couple of carries.
Yeah.
It's just that room is so loaded, it's hard to put him atop the list and answer Cam Davis. It's just Elijah Moore is a much better bet, a much safer bet.
Yeah, I think there's a greater need for Elijah Moore than there is Cam Davis. Yeah, that's probably how that works. That's the Red Zone. Our friends at Artisan Financial Strategies. Make sure you go to NoleRetirement.com and get a free estimate and all those good things. They will help you out, put a plan together, and put your mind at rest. Come back, wrap it up. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Wrapping it up. Can't believe it's the last show that we do before we talk to you from Ireland. And that'll be extraordinary. The Old Storehouse, we've mentioned it before, City Center, Dublin, will be there broadcasting at 6 p.m. on Tuesday night, on Wednesday night, and we'll be there on Friday night as well. That's Irish time, of course, and it's a cool-looking place. If you're watching on the screen, you can see it's a cool-looking place. I might have a Smittix, a Heineken, and a Guinness. Did you see all three of those there on the outside?
It's getting harder and harder, and I say this as somebody who's lived in New York for a while, where they have very good Irish things there. Especially in my neighborhood, as you know, you look around, there's a lot of Irish.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find a good Smittix, even in New York. So I'm looking forward to having a fresh one over there, because when it's right, that Castle Brown Ale is freaking outstanding.
There's opportunities, Tom, for you to sample many to see if they're getting it right. There'll be chances. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you know this about Ireland, but it just seems like there's a lot of pubs. I remember, by the way, when we were over there, we went to the Epic Museum, which is the Irish Immigration Museum. It's incredible. I strongly suggest that everybody go to that while they're there in Dublin. It's called Epic. It's an amazing, amazing museum. And if you want to go, Tom, I'll go with you because it's awesome and it's worth it. You can look up your family lineage, all of it. It's really, really neat. The funny thing is, when we were in there, we were talking, we were lucky because they had us over as guests to showcase and promote these things for people that are coming over this time around. They gave us a kind of behind the scenes tour of a lot of different places, Waterford Crystal, for example, but also this museum. And the curator was telling us how they put everything together. And she said, well, you know what the number one export from Ireland is? And I said, Guinness. And she said, close, Irish pubs. And we started laughing. She goes, if you'll notice, there is an Irish-themed pub in almost every country in the world. He goes, we're in Africa, we're in Canada, we're in New Zealand, we're in the United States. Anywhere you go, you can find an Irish pub. And that's our number one export. I was like, that's funny. That's funny. Imagine all the places around the world where people have bellied up to the bar and had a cold one to discuss whatever it is they want to discuss, their family, their work, politics, music, sport. Somehow the Irish, above all else, mastered the room from which that would take place and then exported it. Pretty damn cool.
Much to the British dismay, because they've got a lot of pubs too, but you don't see London pubs nearly as often as you see Irish pubs.
Thank goodness, because they're average.
Yes, they are. they're wholly average pubs. Yeah, it's the answer to the Italian pizza is the Irish pub.
Yeah, it's weird. the ambiance, they've created a snapshot of where you want to be. I have a picture on my phone that I you know how you can set it up on your phone where it rotates different pictures throughout the course of the day as your screensaver. One of them is an incredible Irish pub that I went to just outside of Dublin the last time I was there. And I remember thinking, if I could recreate this room in my house, say the den looked like this, I don't know that I'd ever leave. Yeah. It was the lighting. It was the decor, everything about it was so incredible. And so I'm pumped to experience, and for all of you going over to experience that as well.
You know, one thing that the British just don't get right in their pubs, the seating is never comfortable. Have you noticed that? When you go to a London, there's something wrong with the seats. The Irish mastered the art of comfortable seating in these pubs. It's not only the lighting, which that would be one of the other places you point to, but I just find that anytime I go to a pub over there, you really have to work to find a place that's worth sitting down. It's almost like they want you to leave, whereas the Irish would rather you stay.
Oh, they'd rather, it's as welcoming a place as you'll ever sit. That's the beauty of it. You walk in and you feel safe. You feel at home. You feel welcomed. You feel like, that's the other thing the Irish do really well, by the way, is they turn off the damn television. They're really good at, like, you got to turn and talk to somebody. Like, we're going to have a conversation, and a jovial one at that, over a pint or 7. And this is going to be a good day, you know. And it's just interesting because you walk in with the expectation that you're not going to be, unless they're showing soccer or they're showing, you know, like that. There's times where they turn on the TV. There's times where they say, no, we're playing in the rugby finals. We're watching the game. Yeah. That's fine. But for the most part, you go in there on a random Tuesday night. That's not what's going on.
So here's my question. I'm sure in Dublin it happens less frequently than other parts of the country. And I'm going to be pretty well in Dublin. I don't know how many day trips I'll make before the 6 p.m. show. How often do you really have to look in, focus, and listen to somebody speak? How the brogue over there?
The Irish brogue is much easier to understand, even when they talk fast and it's thick, as opposed to Scotland. When I went to Scotland, the Scottish, it is unbelievable trying to listen to them when they get to going. And it's you're like, what? I don't know what he just said. I have zero idea what he just said. Whereas the Irish, within probably a day, you're like, oh, I'm adapted. And then you catch yourself talking in the patterns that they talk when everything ends in a question. That's and right. So it's really, it's funny as hell.
We should have a drinking game for the home audience that every time you catch us with one of those while we're broadcasting, it's like, so what do you think about that one? You know, like have a beverage at home, have a sip when you catch us.
What's funny about it too is the first time I went to Ireland, and I'm not doing this to be an ass. That's not a humble brag or anything. I went there on my honeymoon, 20 years ago. And in fact, there's a picture of my wife and I in Ireland somewhere behind me. Anyhow, it's in the case behind me. But we were there for a good long time. I think it was 11 days, 10 full days, 10 and a half days, something like that. And I think by the 7th day, it hit me that her and I were both in the course of conversation with strangers talking like the locals. And I thought to myself, if we moved here within a year, we would sound like we've always lived in Ireland.
It's a sign of endearment. It's like a code switch, and it's organic. It happens, but you're like, I maybe on Saturday for that pregame show. Do you think we'll be leading us in Russian today? Well, Roydell, you think? Okay, maybe Roydell. I thought Toafili would get us.
You don't say. Yeah, that would be good. Everything's a question at the end. That's all you got to do. Good work out of you. Hey, everybody, we're broadcasting live. There's shows next week for you. Nothing on Monday, though. Be well and go Noles. We can't wait to try to provide some context from over in Ireland for you. Take care and have a great weekend. Peace.